Welcome back and thank you very much for staying with us. You're watching Politics Tonight, digging beyond the headlines. And now to some developments in the polity. President Bola Tinubu has administered the oath of office on the newly appointed Secretary to the Government of the Federation, SGF, George Akume. The ceremony was conducted inside the council chambers of the presidential villa. Meanwhile, the former SGF, Boss Mustafa, has urged Akume to, as a matter of priority, attend to pending reports of the Presidential Committee on the review of number and strategy for resourcing Nigeria's diplomatic missions worldwide. He gave the advice when he officially handed over the affairs of his former office to the new Secretary to the Government of the Federation. The 9th House of Representatives says it passed 510 out of the 2,232 bills introduced in its 4-year reign. At a valedictory session to wind down the House, the Speaker, Femi Gbajabiamila, identified electoral reforms, the return of the budget cycle from January to December, the Petroleum Industrial Act and Police Reform Act as some of the achievements of the 9th House. National Assembly correspondent Jakadisa reports.
On the 11th of June 2019, the 9th House of Representatives was inaugurated and Speaker Femi Gbajabiamila elected Speaker. 4 years down the line, it is time to say goodbye. A valedictory session witnessed by former presiding and principal officers of the House. Speaker Femi Gbajabiamila commends his colleagues for their steadfastness as he highlights some of the achievements and challenges of the outgoing House. Discipline in the security sector, return of budget cycle from January to December, the PIA and Electoral Act as some of his success stories.
By our joint effort, we achieved financial independence for state houses of assembly and state judiciary, granting greater autonomy to these arms of government in line with democratic best practice. To succeed in our shared ambition of building a prosperous and peaceful country, we must do everything within our power to ensure that our daughters and those yet to be born can grow up in a more open, more equal society than their mothers did.
It is a day for sober and moral reflection as the legislators, particularly those not returning to the next House, reflect on their stay in the last 4 years. They are particularly grateful for the gift of life, bearing in mind the unfortunate passing of some of them in the course of the 4-year journey.
May their souls continue to rest in peace.
They speak eloquently of Speaker Femi Gbajabiamila's exemplary leadership style and look forward to a rewarding future.
4 years ago, we gathered in these hallowed chambers, Mr. Speaker, as strangers. Mr. Speaker, the journey of 4 years has led us to making friends, brothers, and sisters in these hallowed chambers, a relationship that will last us a lifetime.
As lawmakers, we were faced with the challenge of the legislative process, which entailed navigating complex political landscapes, cultural beliefs, differing viewpoints, and the need for compromise.
The spirit of vision, of commitment, of believing that a country requires the kind of leaders that would have that ability to have a sense of nation.
The 9th House of Representatives has now adjourned indefinitely to pave way for the proclamation and inauguration of the 10th National Assembly next Tuesday, 13th June 2023, when a new Speaker and Deputy Speaker will be elected. Jakadisa, TVC News, Abuja.
Let's take a short break, and when we return, it will be time to speak with our first guest of the day, who is an APC youth stalwart and ICT expert, Niyi Budimowo, for discussion on Jobs and Prosperity Bill and how President Tinubu can create 50,000 jobs. Please stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're still watching Politics Tonight, digging beyond the headlines. And now onto our interview with the first guest of the day. I am joined by an APC youth stalwart and ICT expert, Niyi Budimowo, for discussion on Jobs and Prosperity Bill and how President Tinubu can create 50,000 jobs. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, Engineer.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, let's begin with the issue of fuel subsidy removal. What impact do you think this can have on jobs?
Well, I think if you oblige me, first of all, I'd like to congratulate the Speaker, Femi Gbajabiamila, Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila. You started your segment talking about what the Ninth Assembly has done under his leadership, and of course, distinguished Senator George Akume, our new SGF, right? And I think we're beginning to see a new cabinet shaping up to support the president, and that's a good thing, for Nigeria and ultimately for jobs. One of the first things during the inauguration, I was there at Eagle Square, and I heard him say live that subsidy is gone. As we all know, subsidy was essentially gone long before he became president, because by law, it was meant the subsidy had to expire by June, right? Now, what that means is that, and I think this issue has been discussed extensively in the media, and I think a lot of people have been more educated about what subsidy is and the problems they had brought to Nigeria in terms of ballooning our debt, right, and increasing our debt servicing. What the impact is going to have on jobs, especially in the long term, is that it's going to free up, for the first time, going to free up a lot of additional funds, right, that can be used not for debt servicing now, right, or but also for infrastructure development, for training and capacity development for the young people, and for supporting micro, small, and medium businesses across the nation, right, whether directly or through indirect means. So I think that's the main thing, one of the main things that we're going to be looking forward to, and also. Yeah, I think that's a good thing. That's a good thing for us.
All right. So much has been said about palliatives, programs, interventions, but of course cannot be overemphasized. So what do you think government can do to support businesses to avoid job losses?
Well, I think, so if you look at, so we have to be very careful about this. Yeah, I mean, if you pump a lot of money, into the economy very quickly, and, yes, you'll increase economic activity, but that will also drive inflation. Inflation at the moment is about 22%, right? I think, and that's one of the highest we've had for a long time, right? And one of the government priorities that I'm sure is to bring that inflation down to low double digits or even single digits, right? Well, as was said by one of the former CBN governors, that we need to, if we're going to be providing any sort of palliative or subsidy or anything like that, we should be subsidizing production, right? So I would be looking forward to the government providing palliatives to people, to companies and people that are creating jobs and are producing goods and services that we can export and What
kind of palliatives would you advise?
Well, I think first of all, I think things like tax incentives, right? That's a form of palliative, right? So, but if you think about it, there's genius in that, in the sense that you are, someone that's already paying tax is already being productive, right? It's already in the tax net, right? One of the perennial issues in Nigeria is that a lot of people are outside the tax net and are not able to, they're not paying taxes, they're not supporting the growth of this country, directly through the tax pool, essentially. So by providing tax incentives, you are ensuring that more companies are compliant with taxes, and then you are reducing the tax burden on companies that are already paying taxes and already creating jobs and are growing. Another form of palliative would be, providing additional subsidies for people that are essentially in the transportation sector, because transportation, the major part of our economic activity, it's any disruptions or short-term shocks in that transportation would reflect in food prices. Food prices, as I'm sure you and many other Nigerians family know, have shot up in recent years. So Nigerians are looking for these things to come down. We're already seeing some commodity prices come down with aviation fuel and even gas, and already coming down because of market forces and things like that. And even so, providing additional subsidies and support to businesses would be a good thing.
So all of this discussion in the past few days boils down to revamping the economy.
Yeah.
From your perspective, what other economic challenge do you think the president needs to address to revamp the economy?
Well, I think the biggest, and I'm not going to mince my words, the biggest existential threat, or one of the biggest existential threats that faces our economy is this unemployment. Unemployment is extremely high at the moment. We have the agency that is charged with measuring it and disseminating that information officially, National Bureau of Statistics, has published some figures. The latest figures show that there is at least about 33% direct unemployment in Nigeria and about another 22% in underemployment, people that are working less than what their capacity, less than 20 hours a week, right? That, in numbers, is going to about almost 50 million people. So if you think about it, it's very hard for a lot of people to fathom the fact that there are about 50 million people that are below, they're either unemployed completely, and they're actively looking for work, right? But they cannot find a job or are able to find some sort of work, but it's just very, it doesn't, allow them to fulfill their potential. So if we're trying to, in the Renewed Hope Manifesto, there's a line item there where the government, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, when he was campaigning, had said, that the goal is to drive GDP growth up to about 10% annually on a sustained basis, right? It's a high number, but it is feasible, right? But if the right policies and systems are in place. Now, if we don't tackle unemployment, if we are not, and they are all related. So you have GDP growth. If it's suppressed, and economic activity is suppressed, you also have it's correlated with high unemployment, right? But unemployment is something that we can measure very easily at a granular level, both at the federal level, state level, and even the local government level. And if we are not measuring these things at these granular levels, we will not be able to tie our policies at these levels of government, at these various levels of government, and their effect on unemployment. So one of the things I'm hoping that they will do with this new proposed job and prosperity bill is provide some sort of legislative backing, and incentives for jobs to be created and jobs to be monitored, and measured and published at the granular level, right down to local government level.
All right, let's take a break. But when we come back, we will go back to the issue of unemployment, but streamlining to youth unemployment. All right, I've been speaking with Niyi Bodimowo, an APC youth stalwart and ICT expert. We'll take a break and I'll be right back. Please stay with us.
Institutions fail, organizations crumble, companies go into oblivion, nations are on the path of decline as a result of a deficit in leadership capital. Gardner Leadership Center presents National Leadership Conference with the goal to rejig leadership competencies of senior managers in private and public institutions. This conference provides an opportunity for learning, peer review, and networking, with amazing speakers like Brian Tracy, Professor Lumumba, George Fraser, Stephanie Busari, Senator John Gottin Abraham, Josephine Nweze, Ife Sekibo, Sheriff Idi, Engineer Benga Komolafe, Taiwo Afolabi, Otto Oradam, Rahim Anyako, and Linus Okore. MFR date 23rd and 24th June 2023. Venue Transcorp Hilton, Abuja. To register, visit the link on your screen or call 0815-791-9770. Think leadership, think Gotney.
Welcome back and thank you very much for staying with us. You're watching Politics Tonight, digging beyond the headlines. And I have in the studio APC Youth Stalwart and ICT expert, Engineer Niyi Bodimowo. Tonight we're taking a look at jobs and prosperity bill and how President Tinubu can create 50,000 jobs. All right, before we went on that break, we were talking about unemployment. But now let's break it down to youth unemployment, which remains a challenge, a big challenge. And the president has promised to work with youth. I mean, he said he believes that the more job opportunities are presented to our youth, the less some of them will be tempted into illegal and dangerous activities. Let me ask you, how do you think the president should go about this?
Okay, so youth unemployment is, when we look at the figure, the grand figure, about almost close to 50 million people unemployed, right? A large proportion of that is the youth. And as you go down the age range segment, from maybe 35 to 45 down to 25 to 35, down to 15 to 24, you find that an increasing proportion of that, or those youth populations are unemployed. What that means is that as we progress across the years and more young people, get into the working age bracket, there are fewer and fewer jobs available for them, right? Clearly, government cannot employ everybody, otherwise we'll become a civil service nation, right? Government, can't even, just not enough jobs, not enough vacancies to employ as many people as is needed, right? So one of the things that we need to do is, first of all, understand that we have a big target, right? It's not about creating 1,000 jobs or 100,000 jobs. We are talking about to move the needle from, that almost 50 million people down to about 25 or even down to even maybe 10. It's a monumental effort, but we need to focus on it. So right now, there are some building blocks that are essential for unemployment to reduce. One is we need to build our infrastructure, right? Which over the last 8 years, the last government has done quite well in building infrastructure to enable smoother logistics across the nation. We're building about almost over 8,000 kilometers of new roads across the nation and railway and things like that, right? Then we also need to start building, our capacity training and capacity development on a large scale. Adult education, STEM investment, vertical support. Focusing on our maritime industry. It's a large, it's a big problem in the maritime industry right now, where there are not enough people to fill jobs because they're highly skilled industry. Agriculture, investment in that. Our key components of our economy or our GDP: agriculture, manufacturing, and services. Right, those areas need a specific focus. So the ultimate goal is to say, look, as we are trying to drive business formation amongst the youth. In other words, you want young people to start their own businesses, right? Business formation, business expansion, and job creation. That business formation, we need, if you think about it, when we were in school, one of the things they first taught us about, business, about production is that, you have 4 factors of production: land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. One thing we don't know in Nigeria, that we are not short of entrepreneurship. There are a lot of entrepreneurs in Nigeria, people with great ideas. We have extremely large amount of labor, right? Young people that are really ready and able to work, right? We have land, we have, these are natural, we have lots of natural resources, which is essentially related to land. One recurring decimal that seems to be a shortage is capital, right? So everybody, I'm sure everybody listening right now knows someone that said, I have a great idea, but I don't have money to start it. And that's where it stops, right? In other countries, you can sometimes you just walk into a bank and give them a business plan and they give you a loan. I have people that have told me that Nigerians have gone abroad and they've said they've had an idea, gone to a bank and, they told them write a business plan. The next thing they gave them maybe $5,000 loan and they've done their work and their business. So that's a bit, it's not how it is over here, as we all know. So there are some programs right now that are coming into Nigeria, like, through the Nigerian Startup Act. They're bringing lots of money, about $600 million of new investment from the African Development Bank, Agence Française de Développement, and the Islamic Development Bank that's focused on the digital economy, tech businesses, tech-enabled businesses, and creative sector, right? Those kind of investments are coming in. We need to ensure, and this part is very critical, that these monies are disbursed in such a way that we are trying to optimize for the number of businesses that we are supporting, rather than the scale of the businesses that we are supporting. So we don't want to be picking winners and say let's say that we shouldn't optimize for billion-dollar companies, like maybe 10 numbers of billion-dollar companies, right? That shouldn't be our measure for performance. It should be, look, how many businesses did we support? Even if they are just, their total turnover is $1 million or $2 million a year, right? That is fine, because those are jobs that they are creating and they are keeping people in employment and out of the streets, and they are keeping us safer, right? So one key takeaway is that everything we are doing in terms of like empowering people should be optimized for scale to support lots of people, because we have a lot of jobs to create, even down to government procurement, right? I'm privy to something in America whereby, if you go to, they have this website where they list all their government procurement contracts, and when you sometimes just go and look at it and just out of interest see what's going on there, and you just find out sometimes there'll be a contract and they'll write or tender and they say this is earmarked for minority businesses only, minority-owned businesses, or women, or some other group. But we need to do that, but more of that, to ensure that, look, we are providing, because government is the biggest spender in Nigeria, that, look, government, as you are spending all this money, right, please try and make sure that you are taking care of the young people, right?
All right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about jobs and prosperity bills that the president intends to use to provide policy framework to encourage light industries. Can you throw more light on that?
Okay. So the first time a lot of people, most Nigerians, heard about the jobs and prosperity bill is during the president's inaugural speech, right? This tells you that it's not as if they've dotted the I's and crossed the T's. It's an aspirational bill, right? So at this point in time, because we know the policy direction of the government, that, look, we want to create a bill, the government has already identified that, job creation and prosperity and increasing the standard of living is the number one priority, right? We have to now, continue. We as young people, whether we are politically inclined or business inclined or whatever it is, we need to ensure that we are speaking out to say what we want, right? So I've said, look, one thing that got in that bill, should be in that bill, is specific support for young businesses to ensure that there are incentives and mandates for government agencies and for even businesses, incentives, right, to support jobs, right? So even if you're not, there's some businesses that are not labor intensive, right? But they generate large amounts of cash, right? What kind of incentives can we provide to them to ensure that maybe they are also helping to fund business support organizations like hubs, digital libraries, empowerment schemes, right? So that essentially we always have capital being available to young people that want to start up their own businesses. I think that part is very critical, and it should be enshrined in that bill. Mandates and incentives for businesses and agencies to support job creation and to measure it, and in every single policy that's coming out of every government agency, every regulation, it should be a way to say, look, same way that you have environmental impact assessment, to say, look, what is your job impact assessment? How many jobs these policies that you've created now, how many net new jobs is it creating? Is it destroying jobs, or is it creating it? And the first step is even measuring how many jobs are within your domain, whether local government, state, or federal. So I'll just tell you a few numbers. Right now, in the state with the highest number of employment, lowest unemployment is Ogun State. It's about 20%, right? And on the other hand, you have states like maybe Imo and that have extremely high unemployment, right? All this information published by the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics. So each of these states has peculiar interests, right? And they need to be able to focus on those employment figures and make sure that they're moving the needle. And the incentive needs to be there from the federal government to the state governments to ensure that they are actually doing that, so that in aggregate, the GDP will increase. And this aim of 10% GDP growth can be achieved. Because if we don't measure these things, what you sometimes have a lot of vanity policies, right? Where it all sounds good. We're doing this, we're doing that. Well, it's like what we call motion without movement. It sounds good. You go and make presentations, but when you come down to it, you are not creating jobs. In fact, sometimes you're actually destroying jobs. So if we must measure accurately and at granular level down to local government level. It's very important.
All right, so because you say this is an aspiration bill, am I right? Okay, so are there any challenges the government may face in bringing this to reality?
Well, I don't think there will be. Okay. I think we are dealing with a very astute politician in the president. He's been, in this political scene for many years, for many decades, right? And then he's a Democrat. He's working closely with the National Assembly, and I think, generally speaking, when you even watch some of the initial discussion that they're having in the State Council chamber, you can see that he has essentially taken off the toga of partisanship and becoming, and has put on the cloak of statesmanship. They say, look, governors, whether you are APC, PDP, NMPP, ABGA, or LP, let us work together for the good of this nation, right? And I think that's a good, that's a good sign. It's a good sign.
Fantastic. Now, the president promised to create 1 million jobs in the digital sector of the economy. What comparative advantage do you think Nigeria has in the technology sector to achieve this?
Okay. So 1 million jobs, personally, I think we can do a lot more than that. I think, maybe they're being conservative, right? If you build bottom up, we'll support it. But I've been in the tech sector for pretty much all my life, right? That's what I read in school, and that's what I've been doing, running software businesses. And I've seen firsthand the amount of talent, the variety of talent that we have here in Nigeria, right? To support, and we're even seeing it now, that young Nigerians, even the ones that are based here, are working, in an outsourcing capacity with organizations around the world, from Japan to America. I see them all the time, right? So that is working. And we've also seen that based on the last economic reports, the tech sector, digital economy, has contributed about 18% to our GDP. So that's a great thing. So what we need to do now is to continue to support those businesses. I talked earlier about the Nigerian Startup Act. That's the opportunities that are in there. The government should take that as a priority one. And another thing that's very important that we haven't spoken about and extremely important is the continental free trade area.
All right, we will talk about that when we come back from this commercial break. Please stay with us.
All right.
In the corridors of power, a new chapter unfolds. The 10th National Assembly beckons, and at its helm, a leader of unwavering resolve and unyielding dedication, Senator Godswill Akpabio, a beacon of hope for a brighter Nigeria. From the halls of governance to the Senate floor, Senator Akpabio's journey has been one of fearless leadership and steadfast commitment. His vision for a prosperous Nigeria echoes through his every action. From commissioner to governor, from senator to minister, Senator Akpabio's remarkable journey has left an indelible mark on Nigeria. His uncommon transformation has reverberated across the nation, earning him the nickname Uncommon. Beyond his remarkable accomplishments, Senator Akpabio's heart beats for the unity of our great nation. Today, as he aspires to be the Senate's president of the 10th Senate, Senator Akpabio's unyielding passion for an egalitarian Nigeria fuels his vision for a united nation, where every citizen's voice is heard and respected. Support Senator Godswill Akpabio for the Senate President of the 10th Senate and join the movement for a united Nigeria, where our shared aspirations become our collective reality.
Thank you very much for staying with us. You're watching Politics Tonight, digging beyond the headlines. And I still have with me Engineer Niyi Godimowo, APC Youth Stalwart and ICT experts tonight, discussing jobs and prosperity bill and how President Tinubu can create 50,000 jobs. Please go on with your line of thoughts.
Okay, so before we went on break, I was talking about the AfCFTA, African Continental Free Trade Area, right? So just quickly, free trade area is essentially the continent of Africa, and is an agreement that we can now trade amongst ourselves easily without the very minimum or zero tariffs, right? It's kind of like an earlier version of what you have in the EU, where that they have a common market and full economic integration. But we are going on that path, right? So what that does, in fact, interestingly, 7 years ago till today, on the 7th of June 2019, former President Buhari signed, and Nigeria ratified its membership, the AfCFTA, into our law, right? And since then we haven't really seen much progress.
Yeah, right? I was going to say that.
Exactly, and I think before I don't belabor reasons why, but we know that trade has occurred. Last year, Kenya started, I think, the first trade, exporting tea to Ghana, right? These are there are opportunities for Nigerian youths to expand beyond Nigeria, to start to trade more with all our other African countries. The scale of that trade is about $560 billion and of African imports, and only 12% of that is done within Africa. So African countries are only importing about $560 billion. Only 12% of that is from other African countries. And what are we importing? things like automobiles, computers, phones, clothing. There are some of these things that we actually have a comparative advantage in our textile industry, in our own manufacturing of engineering equipment, and even computer repair and things like that, right? And also, from then you now look at services, like we have a growing software industry, we have a growing content creation and entertainment industry. So the government needs to focus on increasing awareness, ensuring that our people, our young people, are aware of these opportunities in other countries, and establish trade desks across all these African countries so that opportunities that are available are brought to our knowledge and we are able to exploit them easily.
All right, so constant electricity is crucial to job creation, as said by the president in his inaugural speech. What options are available for Nigeria to boost power supply?
Well, I think, we're in Lagos here. I think Lagos has been one of the champions for modular electricity production, right? Off-grid power, solar, things like that, and I think the era of, large-scale projects, because we're a large nation, we've been building new dams, but as we are growing, our electricity needs are increasing. But we need to ensure that more of our states are able to generate their own power and distribute it easily. We need to sort of I don't want to use the word break apart, but essentially increase competition within the distribution leg of the distribution leg of the chain. And also, one thing that we also need to keep in mind is that...
How does the government do that?
Well, first of all, let's take it straight. There's a new electricity is now something that is now on the concurrent list, right? So that state governments can actually generate, right, and they can license organizations to generate, right? So that's the first step. So you now have the power, right? So you can license new ones. Then you can now also, establish an area, maybe an estate or something like that, and ensure that that distribution within that cell, right, is done by an organization, and so those kind of structures need to be put in place all across, the states. And that's
another critical sector, another critical issue is security.
Yeah.
What do you think needs to be done to make the country more secure?
Well, the president was at with the NSA and at the NIA building recently, and they talked about intelligence, right? Data gathering intelligence. It's very critical. It's the first leg. So we need to have, apart from signals intelligence, we also need to have more human intelligence. We have more people trained to support our security forces. In Lagos here, we have our own neighborhood safety and security agency. I'd like to see more of that across the other states. I don't think the federal government should necessarily lead the drive on this, right, for better state security. I think the state should lead the drive, but through the leadership of the government, of the president, sorry.
All right, thank you very much, Engineer Niyi Godimowo, APC Youth Stalwart and ICT experts, tonight to discuss our Jobs and Prosperity Bill and how President Tinubu can create 50,000 jobs. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you very much for throwing more light on this bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So good to have you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. All right, let's take a short break, and when we return, it will be time to speak with our second guest of the day, who is a lawyer and advocate for good governance, justice, and equity, Libras Ashoma, for discussion on judges getting tough over frivolous cases. Please stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're still watching Politics Tonight, digging beyond the headlines, and now to our second interview for the day. I am joined by a lawyer and advocate for good governance, justice and equity, Libras Ashoma, for discussion on judges getting tough over frivolous cases. Thank you very much for joining us again tonight, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure always, sir.
So let's begin with litigations regarding outcome of the 2023 elections. How will you describe the situation at various courts so far?
Yeah, so far so good. That has been the procedure before now, right from 1999. In 2011, there was improvement. In 2015, there were a bit of improvement also. 2019, there was a whole lot, of improvement. Some petitions that would have ordinarily be thrown away at the preliminary stage, because of the amendment to the practice direction and then the rules, objections were taken and then judgment reserved till, at the end of the cases. So there was improvement. So you hear the case to the end and then determine everything once. And then all those appeals, going on appeal over applications also, were stayed and they stopped. So it's all well. A lot have started at various states. Some are still waiting for pre-hearing. So it's, after 180 days from now, all of this will die down and then we'll see what happens. But at the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal also, it's been good. We've seen lawyers doing their thing, and the most important thing is that the judges have been on top of their game. And like they say, when the judge is on trial, the judge is on trial. And all of those pandering towards sentiment and the rest, the judges have not allowed the opinions to be swayed. Also, this idea of using social media to hound judges have consistently held out their own, and that's good for all parties.
So it's now very interesting to see how judges are going tough on frivolous cases. Why is this seemingly inevitable?
Yeah, it will become very inevitable with the advent of social media. I remember the last time I was on this program, I did say that one of the reasons why the Election Petition Tribunal will also refuse application for live hearing of the matter of the tribunal will probably be one of those issues of pandering. They would want to avoid a situation where people would rather pander to sentiment than the law. So with the advent of social media, where almost everybody is a judge, almost everybody is a lawyer, and you see lawyers also leaving the law to discuss sentiment on social media, some of them are more interested in granting interviews after the case than fighting their case in court. And then some of them would rather want to impress the public or impress their clients than the fine letters of the law. So if the judges do not hold their own, if they don't put their foot down, some of them can be intimidated out of their seat. And so because the judges do not have the opportunity to also come to social media and begin to grant interviews and begin to, pander to sentiment. So that's why they wait for the lawyers, at the appropriate time to mete out, the appropriate sanction. And that's what is obtainable before now, even in, other societies, other jurisdictions that we copy, where lawyers waste the time of the court sanction them heavily. And so they know the implication of all of that. And so no lawyer would want to just go to court for going to court sake. But like in America, where people go to court frivolously because, the legal system there is much more flexible than the rigid one that is practiced in England, and that ours is tailored after.
But some analysts blame this on desperation on the part of politicians. But why are lawyers allowing themselves to be pushed?
It is a politician can be desperate. It is now behoves on you as a professional to permit me to use the word, to cut that politician to size using your professional finesse and your superior knowledge. The presumption is that as a lawyer, as a professional, you have the superior knowledge of the law. You should be able to advise your client. I have had cases where clients come to me and insist, the law, we must go to court on this. And I tell you, there is no way there, no matter how much you're offering me, I would not want to go and waste my time in court because I know certainly the beginning and end of that matter. So, but a situation where lawyers allow their sentiments, their political leaning to overwhelm their sense of judgment or to overcloud their professional discipline. So you will not begin to now blame politicians that it is the lawyers are allowing themselves to be dragged by politicians. For crying out loud, the lawyer is a professional and he should act professionally. Let me give you an instance. A situation where a lawyer knows fully well, constitutionally, that A sitting central bank governor does not have the right, or the law does not permit him to join a political party. He now says he wants to vie for the office of the president as a sitting central bank governor. Rather than resign, he employs a senior advocate who goes to court and says he wants to test the law. He wants to stretch the law. He wants to challenge the law. Which law are you challenging when there is no provision for such? And then the judge, you waste the time of the court, you waste taxpayers' money because the judge is sitting and being paid, you waste the time of printing papers that of the court, and they do not even have jurisdiction to hear this matter, or that the matter is dead on arrival. Another one, election had been conducted. You all know, it's elementary law, what we call, even in contract, there's what we call privity of contract. There's what we call cause of action and right of action. Elections have been conducted, and then also there are jurisdictional courts. You know that for pre-election and post-election matters, you know the parties who should be, who can approach the court. Results have been announced, and you also know that by virtue of the Evidence Act, once results are announced, they are presumed regular until the election tribunal, not the Federal High Court, not the State High Court, not even the Supreme Court. The election petition tribunal closed with the jurisdiction to handle those matters until they say otherwise. You know, you don't have any because you approach the regular court and say invalidate this election on the ground that there is a constitutional question that should have been answered. And meanwhile, that same constitutional question is a matter that is pending before a superior court. Which lawyer does that? If judges do not sanction lawyers for doing that, then before you know, we will throw the profession to Harry can just read and file paper and say, please, I need you to certify madman.
All right, let me quickly ask you this. How true is it that Nigerians are the most litigious people on earth?
I do not have the data for that statistics, but I know that if our case laws are not lying, Nigerians really are really highly, and that is why the slogan "Go to court," has now become an everyday thing. Where you sell a land to 5 different persons and you tell them go to court. Where because you know the windmill of justice grinds slowly, we say of justice grinds slowly but surely, but we forget justice delayed, justice denied. You intentionally breach a contract, you say go to court. You borrowed money from somebody and you refuse to pay, you say go to court. You take out a property on a mortgage, you default in the foreclosure. To get a court order, you say lead to action, you sin and rush to court. In some cases, you find out that matters ordinarily that ought not to be in court are in court. So you Absolutely. Get to court, sometimes you have 72 cases on a cost list, which is why that even the system of practice had been introduced, front loading of documents to streamline the time for court cases, because some of them you have. In some cases, you have about 4. I also think that for political matters such as this, the best thing for the court to do is to come with heavy sanctions, including frivolous matters.
All right.
The court will come with sanctions on not just the litigants.
So what impact do you think this filing of frivolous cases will have on Nigeria's democracy?
Yeah, you see, you're unfortunate that the judiciary, I mean,
please go ahead.
Okay then, okay. So the judiciary has been so vilified that even when judgments and sanctions like this are melted out, it is also common for the public to say, oh yes, it's because it's the government in power. Oh, the litigants are being hounded, you know, and all sorts. So, but if we take steps like this, ensure that frivolous cases, there are consequences, adequate consequences, and immediate and swift consequences for actions and reactions. All of these frivolous cases will find a way of limiting them. Also, we must also suggest that for election petition, for example, people have suggested that we need to reduce also further the time for hearing cases. Elections should be conducted on time, and then the time for determining, you know, cases should be before swearing in. That will also, in a way, reduce all of these frivolous cases. Dispose.
All right, I've been speaking with
a busybody for swearing in. These are assuring all parties, all hands on deck.
All right, you've talked about sanctions, you've talked about consequences, but apart from imposition of fines, what kind of sanctions would you like to see? What kind of disciplinary measures would you like to see? Did you get this, Mr. Libros?
Or the court had that matter that is under reference. You know this. So the court had asked that the case file be duplicated and referred to the legal practitioners disciplinary committee. And then in cases, apart from fine, you know, in some cases when you know that your license is at stake, that you are dangling your license in public, you will mind your own trances and you mind the kind of cases that you file, which is what happens in England. Licenses are suspended. Even medical practitioners' licenses are suspended for negligence. Here, lawyers, for the negligence of a lawyer, nothing happens. So I think that in the bar and the bench, there's need for collaboration and synergy, that where lawyers also, you know, go beyond their brief like this. There's need to look at how, you know, even licenses can be suspended. When this happens, I can tell you that before a lawyer will take up a matter, no matter the money involved, he will also look at his license and, you know, look at the consequences of such actions for just a few naira note.
So at this point, how will you advise lawyers to handle matters involving politicians and election litigations?
Yeah, I will, if what I do, this is my practice, cases where I know that the politician will not want to listen, even if the case is frivolous, I chase them with charges. There are some charges you would, there are some fee you would charge, and the politician would ask himself, why will I want to do this? So for lawyers, there's need for consistently update of the provisions of the law. As the laws are amended, the practice directions are amended, there's need for continuous education by lawyers so that you know which one is elementary, which one is not elementary. Also, the bar need to, I know they are doing a lot, but also there's need for all-inclusiveness on education of lawyers, not just junior lawyers, because some of these issues are done by old lawyers. Some of these frivolous actions are filed by even senior advocates. So there's need for an all-inclusive step to ensure are not just pamper lawyers a lot should desist from this attitude of pampering senior lawyers who believe that they are overboard and that they can do anything and get away with it. So once that is done, at least that will also go a long way in ensuring that the bar takes the first step before the disciplinary committee does anything. And then finally, there's need for a review of cases. Any case that is filed before such case is assigned to any judge, there's need for good review the matter, and at that stage, decide that it is not worthy of being filed. Once you do that, you'll be able to keep a lot of cases out of the cost list. So most of the cases that are not, that do not really meet sifted out at that stage, and then you reduce the number of cases.
All right, so that's for lawyers. But for politicians, what do you have to say to them about taking matters to court unnecessarily?
Remember, I don't know if that fine was eventually enforced. You remember the Owerri, Imo State judgment of the Supreme Court. As bad as it was, we say the Supreme Court is final, not because they are infallible, but they are infallible because they are final. As bad as that judgment was, senior advocates still took the matter to court, asking court to whether interpret. Respected senior advocate asking court whether interpret or review. And there was sanctions meted out on these lawyers, which I expected the politicians also to bear. Some of these politicians, the fine should insist that such fines petition. So when such is done, the politician will also think twice to ensure that they know what they are doing before even approaching a lawyer to file a frivolous matter, knowing fully well that he might go bankrupt for that.
All right. Finally, before we go, how much pressure does this put on the judiciary?
A lot. It's unimaginable. It's unimaginable pressure because you find out that the times for delivering judgment on cases that are not frivolous, you spend them on listening to and hearing frivolous applications, frivolous matters. In some cases, multiplicity of suits. So other cases that have substance are delayed because you have 40 cases, 50 cases on your cost list that you must hear. And out of these 40 or 50 cases, about 25 are cases that ordinarily should not get to court. And so it put pressure on the judge, it put pressure on the system, and at the end of the day, it also delayed the course of justice for the litigant. So that is why a government and a judiciary that is ready to move, apart from embracing technology, there's need for such to sit down with the bar to ensure that, this discussion on filing of frivolous application, this discussion on sentimental litigation, there should be a roundtable discussion on it and recommendation made and truly, properly followed through. Because you find out that we have embraced technology in hearing matters. But when the number of frivolous cases keep coming up and this attitude of lawyers trying cases in the mid than in court, it is going to clog the wheel of justice and the dispensation of justice. And it is not good for any society that wants to move, because if your judiciary is not up and doing, if business people know they cannot get judgment swiftly, there are delays in getting judgment in the society.
Thank you very much.
Business would rather go to other countries. That's why quickly, you find out that in most business transactions in Nigeria, big businesses, they would rather put an arbitration clause to be determined in England than in Nigeria.
All right. Thank you very much, Libra Soshoma, a lawyer and advocate for good governance, justice, and equity. Thank you very much for your contribution on the program tonight. Thank you. And thank you very much for watching. That marks the end of today's episode of Politics Tonight. But the conversation continues from here. Get in touch with us on Twitter at TVC News NG and at Olajumoke using the hashtag Politics Tonight. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Goodbye.
Happic sachets. It has a thick formula, so all you need is just one sachet for your toilet bowl. It gives 10 times better cleaning and big savings too.
Wow, Helen!
Sparkling clean toilet with Happic sachet.
Itchy, greasy, and smelly braids can be a thing of the past. Introducing the new Ruba braids from Expression, made with 100% Aquatex fiber from Canicolon. The new Ruba braids from Expression is extremely fast drying and perfect for friction-free washing. Stay dry this season with the new Ruba braids from Expression, now available in pre-stretch and regular braid variants and in beauty shops near you.
The new Happic sachets. It has a thick formula, so all you need is just one sachet for your toilet bowl. It gives 10 times better cleaning and big savings too.
Wow, Helen!
Sparkling clean toilet with Happic sachet.
In the month of June, the 4th of June 2023 makes it 27 years since the wife of the late MKO Abiola, Kudirat Abiola, was murdered. 5th of June is World Environment Day. On the 7th of June, the global community celebrates World Food Safety Day, while June 12 is Democracy Day in Nigeria. Also, June 12 is World Day Against Child Labor. 13th of June is a day set aside for International Albinism Awareness, while 14th of June is World Blood Donor Day. The 19th of June is set aside as International Day for the Elimination of Sexual Violence in Conflict. It's also set aside as World Sickle Cell Day. 26th of June is International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking. 30th of June is International Day of Parliamentarism. Brace yourself for the month of June and stay tuned to TVC News for special reports and analysis. At TVC News, wherever the big news story is happening, we're geared up to break it. TVC News, first with breaking news.
His Excellency, yes sir, is the one we came, Commander of the Order of the Niger, Grand 7-Star River State, Life Bench.
Like an onion, the more you peel it, the more you discover its beautiful and inner parts. It is also said that greatness is like the acorn seed that grows into a mighty oak tree. In the words of John Milton, the morning shows the day as childhood shows the man. This is the perfect portrayal of a man who has been nicknamed Mr. Project, a name bestowed on him by the immediate past Vice President, Professor Yemi Oshibanjo.
My host and my brother, Dr.